Later that night, as she was taking her bath, she pondered about the things that happened. The things that make her suffer, her ruined relationship with her husband, everything is just full of despair. Holding her husband's personal knife that he handed her earlier that day, she decided to act drastically. Her bath water turned crimson. As she was having her bath, her husband reviewed the leniency petition she submitted. Comparing her past love letters to the petition she wrote, it was visually evident how her penmanship changed. Her once calligraphy quality letters are now akin to the scribbles of a child. Looking through her past letters sent him back to memory lane. Those times when they were so in love that none of the horrors of the past matter. Her husband immediately stopped his reverie when he noticed something was off about her actions. She never apologized, at least not in person. She would always do it in her letters. Flooded with unspeakable fear, her husband rushed to her chambers to find her bathroom locked. He rammed the door until it gave way. The scene that welcomed her husband was her bathing in her own blood. She slashed her wrist using his personal knife. Lifting her from the bath, he shouted at a servant to go fetch the doctor. Worry flooded his face as he called her name over and over. But she won't even stir. Fortunately, her doctor was fast enough to close the wound on her wrist before it was too late. That night, after she was declared stable, her husband returned to his chambers. He spent a sleepless night dreaming about his wife when he first saw her. What started as a sweet reverie became an instant nightmare as the horror of his reality caught up to him. He woke up uttering his wife's name. Her husband spent the whole day in her room, waiting for her to wake up. When she won't even stir after a day has passed, he asked the doctor and received grave news. The blonde lady's constitution is already weak to begin with, due to the previous shooting incident, her miscarriage, and at present, her suicide attempt. Her body has gotten too weak and can't keep up. She went into shock from excess bleeding. Waking up depends on her will to survive. Her husband finds it hard to fathom how she was able to commit such a thing. She's afraid of many things, including the mere sight of blood. It terrifies her. Torn between his hatred and the unspoken feeling welling up somewhere inside him, he despaired about the blonde lady's unchanging situation. The malicious articles in the news only thwarted the facts about her suicide attempt. Some accused her of lobbying for sympathy, others called her unpleasant, while others used her plight as a lesson to learn from. All of the baseless accusations made her husband want to shoot the media that flocked right outside their gate. Her husband was having those ill thoughts when the butler informed him that his wife's childhood friend, the golden-eyed man, has arrived and requesting to see the blonde lady. The blonde lady's husband immediately gave orders to drive the visitor away. But he was informed that the guest would like to see him instead. Having no desire to face the visitor, propriety urged him to entertain him and instructed the butler to show the visitor to the main hall's drawing room. The moment the blonde lady's husband entered the room, the golden-eyed man rained him with accusations and blamed him for what happened with the blonde lady. Grabbing him by the collar, the golden-eyed man confronted the blonde lady's husband. The golden-eyed man demanded the blonde lady's husband to hand her over to him. But her husband had seen through his real intention. The golden-eyed man plans to bring the blonde lady to the monarchy restoration forces. They hope to resurrect the monarchy using his wife's noble lineage. What they do not know is that she's barren. She won't be of any use to them. Keeping her secret, the blonde lady's husband stonewalled and refused to relent. Out of desperation, the golden-eyed man threatened the blonde lady's husband that he'll sue him in court for driving his own wife to suicide. That alone would be basis enough for a divorce. The blonde lady's husband dared the golden-eyed man if he truly believes she'll be happier if he took her away. In response, he scathingly told the blonde lady's husband that at least he knows she won't be unhappy to the point that she'll want to commit suicide. The visitor came and gone. The blonde lady's husband went on a break, but work still came. His subordinate brought it to him. As he was signing the papers, his subordinate maliciously implied that the blonde lady deliberately committed suicide to earn sympathy. Her husband corrected the speculation. She committed suicide with the sole intent to kill herself. When the subordinate left, her husband decided to visit her room. He took advantage of the fact that his wife has been transferred to the annex to recuperate, and tried to inspect her room to look for signs connected to her suicide. What he found astounded him. In a safe he found the seashells he threw in the trash bin, safely tucked in a jewelry drawstring pouch. Her wedding ring carefully kept in its original box, and an accounting document from the Citizens Association, which she was in charge of back then. Seeing all of it up close made her husband realize that she's been preparing to disappear. Her ring in his hand, the blonde lady's husband visited her. He is still undecided about his feelings. All he knows is that he hates her, he'll continue to resent her, to seek revenge against her. But he still wanted her to stay at his side. Whilst the blonde lady is unconscious, her husband promised to take her to the sea, as soon as she wakes up. He'll let her watch the sea as much as she wants, let her do whatever she wants. The blonde lady woke up from a dream where she can hear a piano playing. When she came to, she saw her husband's face. Her nonchalant expression was immediately replaced by terror. Her husband was hoping she'll regret harming herself. But no, all he saw from her was her disappointment that she failed to kill herself. When her emotions abated a bit, she had a brief talk with her husband. She asked him if he saved her, he said yes. She wondered why he saved her when he hates her. She believes her husband wishes for her demise. Her suicide is fitting for such an end. Her husband told her he never wished for her to die. The next day, the blonde lady fully recovered her consciousness and was returned to her bedchambers. From that day onwards, her childhood friend, the golden-eyed man, visited her frequently and continuously persuaded her to divorce her husband. He's been telling her to go away with him and live with the other nobles abroad. Seeing it as a perfect opportunity, the blonde lady seized the moment and informed her childhood friend that she's barren. The monarchy can't use her to continue the royal bloodline. Even as a symbol of the royal family, she is worthless. Shock momentarily filled his face. However, it didn't stop him from persuading her. True enough, the monarchy sent him to visit her often for the exact purpose she mentioned. But his reason was personal. He is still in love with her. Nevertheless, when she asked him if he'll marry her, his answer became vague. He gave a hesitant yes, but gave valid excuses such as his recent divorce and her ongoing separation talks with her husband. Despite his indefinite answer to her inquiry, he brazenly asked her one more time if she'll come with him. The blonde lady's childhood friend left with his offer still left hanging. As he treaded the long hall of their residence, the golden-eyed man encountered the blonde lady's husband. Sensing that the golden-eyed man failed to persuade the blonde lady, her husband sarcastically told the golden-eyed man that it's about time he stopped pestering her. He also told him that she's barren and she won't be of any use to the monarchy. But the golden-eyed man retaliated by saying that he knows about her condition. When asked how, he blatantly lied and hinted that he knew it from the start. This exchange between the two made the blonde lady's husband reiterate in firm tones that no matter what the golden-eyed man does, they will never divorce. That the blonde lady can never leave him. As the golden-eyed man watched the back of the blonde lady's husband, he realized the look the man had in his eyes. Those were the eyes of a defeated soldier. His words weren't for anyone, it was for himself. That night, as the blonde lady lay on her bed, wallowing, she mused over the things that transpired that morning. Specifically, the part where she asked her childhood friend, the golden-eyed man, if he'll marry her. Seeing how he hesitated, she reasoned it out as a natural reaction, considering her current situation. There's no benefit to be legally tied to a woman who has nothing to offer. However, the thought of being the golden-eyed man's lover is overwhelming. Her reverie was broken when her husband entered her room unannounced. He invited her for a nightly stroll outside. Much to her husband's surprise, she relented without fuss. Despite being dressed warmly, her husband kindly offered his gloves for her to wear. She accepted without fuss, which surprised her husband even more. During their stroll, her husband asked if there's a place she would like to go to. She gave him a nonchalant none. He offered to take her to the beach once the weathers got warmer, and made other plans to go to places she'd like. All she gave him was a resigned yes. Her husband was baffled with her attitude but felt relieved. However, the next day, a sharp-edged comb was found in her room. This prompted her husband to consult a professional and proceed with her psychological consultation. The blonde lady still acts indifferent with the sessions, but she's no longer refusing it. As part of her rehabilitation, her husband is making efforts to strike conversations with her. All she does is nod or give brief replies full of resignation. Still, it made her husband a bit relieved. But no. Something is still making him anxious, he just can't put a name to it. This neutral relationship continued until it was time for the holidays. On a winter morning, the blonde lady's husband bought a brooch for her as a surprise gift. Feeling optimistic, he decided to hand it to her personally. He treaded the hall that leads to her chambers, planning to ask her to go outside for a stroll. As her husband tried to open the door of her room, he realized it was locked. Dread flooded him. The servant that was appointed to keep the blonde lady company at all times, came and informed him that she left his wife for a while to fetch some water. Filled with fear, he rammed the door until it gave away. His trepidation became reality. For there, up on the ceiling, a red rope can be found. The blonde lady on the other end hanging by its noose. Driven by urgency, her husband cut the rope and caught her. Shock and relief engulfed him. She's still alive. Lost as to what could he do for her, he barraged her with questions and propositions. What does she think she's doing? What can he do to make her stop her suicide attempts? All she uttered was she no longer wanted to live. Would she promise she'll live if he divorced her? If she wishes to live with her childhood friend, the golden-eyed man, he'll allow it. All her husband asked of her is to continue to live in exchange for her freedom. Immediately after her recent attempt on her life, divorce process flowed smoothly. Until the finalization came. The executor of wills handed her the document to sign. It'll end their marriage for good. She signed without fuss. As she did so, the secretary told her that she could stay in the residence even after the divorce. She politely declined and promptly made preparations to leave. Treading the hallway that leads to the front door, her ex-husband approached her. He handed her the brooch he bought for her, and a handkerchief embroidered in gold thread. Wishing her a warm year-end holiday marked their final goodbye. Going outside, the blonde lady's mind is filled with thoughts of recent events. The divorce she longed for happened in an instant, but she felt nothing about it. Remembering her husband's pleading voice as he promised to divorce her as long as she promised to continue living, made her consider if she should die. Lost in her reverie, she ended up on a public bench. Staring blankly at the brooch her husband handed her, she wondered what can she do to end her life. Approaching footsteps made her look up. The blonde lady's ex-husband watched her leave. He watched her disappearing back as she walks away from their residence. Alone, he mused, where did their relationship go wrong? His ex-wife wasn't wrong when she accused him of approaching her intentionally. But the order of things, as she believed they were, weren't right either. Seeing her for the first time, filled him with blind admiration. He became her father's, the Marquis, dog, so he can get closer to her. For he knows that there's no way someone like him of lower status can get her attention. He fought hard, killing and murdering countless people in a dirty and bloody manner just to have her. In the end, they just grew apart. Her ex-husband resented her because it took his blood and sacrifice just to make her happy. It was all because of her that he turned out the way he did. Everything about him started with her. It all started when he was 15, in a secret military training camp, an island located in the southern seas, run by the royal corps, whose head was none other than her father, the Marquis. Orphans were discarded as an excuse to beautify the kingdom's surroundings, but in reality, they were sent to be trained as spies. In there, it was a dog-eats-dog situation. It matters not if they murder each other, what matters most is that the camp produces the best spies that the kingdom could use. The lesser trainees survived, the lesser the kingdom would need to spend. When his soul friend got murdered during one of their training exercises, he killed all senior students who were instrumental to his death, not because he wanted to avenge his death, he just found it the perfect opportunity to show off his skills. This is how he earned the attention of the Marquis. That night, after the demise of their seniors, their instructor informed him of the Marquis' exclusive invitation to luncheon in his lavish mansion. It was every trainee's dream. To be invited to his residence is akin to recruitment to his exclusive troupe. He was filled with awe as he saw the luxurious place, even more amazed as he gazed at the awe-inspiring painting at the ceiling of the Marquis Palace. Even the dishes were so elaborate and over the top. After lunch, they were given an exclusive treat to the Marquis' extravagant rose garden. They were given free pass to explore and enjoy the place. Feeling tired, he searched for a place to waste time and grab some sleep. He found the perfect spot under a tree where a marble seat stood. As his consciousness faded to sleep, he suddenly heard a familiar melody being played in a piano. He doesn't know the title or who composed it, but he knows it from an old music box he used to listen to. Following the source of music, he found himself staring at a girl by the piano. Radiant and divine, her beauty reminds him of the majestic Saint Mary he saw moments ago during their lunch with the Marquis in the ceiling painting of the mansion. As if compelled to get closer, he took a step forward, only to snap a twig as his foot stepped on it. Not wanting to be seen as an intruder, he ran away, missing the curious face on the young lady when she heard the noise. Running as fast as he could, he found himself deep in the gardens, a good distance away from the source of the spellbinding piano playing. Berating himself for getting attracted to the sound, he reminded himself that music plays no part in survival. But he can't fully drive it away. Unable to forget, unable to let go, her music became the eternal focus of his life. Driven with the desire to hear her music and see her once more, he aced all training camp exercises just so he can be included again in the list of trainees that the Marquis will invite to his residence. Top marksman, outstanding in loyalty education, he became the topper of their class. Once again, his achievements came to fruition, it caught the Marquis' attention, and once more he was invited to the luxurious mansion. As soon as luncheon was over, and they were given free access to roam the gardens, he rushed to where he first saw her. As expected, she was there, playing that same melody he yearns for. Listening to her piano performance felt like they're the only ones left in the world. Because it seems like, from somewhere far away, where cold reality does not exist, their hearts are entwined in happiness. She became his sole inspiration. But, no matter how well a man hides his innermost feelings, it is bound to spill out. One evening, as he was visiting the infirmary to have his periodic injection of mood stabilizer, their physician, a kind elderly woman, hinted that she notices a change in his demeanor. Brushing it off, he hoped to divert her attention. Instead, she kindly warned him. Aspiring for something can be poisonous. The next day, to his surprise, her bloodied body was found, a noose tied around her neck. Winter came and the dreaded biannual torture and survival training began. Amidst the harshness of their drills, his solace was the simulated scenes he plays in his head. Not minding the insults, being called useless beings whose sole purpose is to become the bodies that can be sacrificed for the peace of their nation. He spent 4 years enduring the harsh environment of the training camp, rewarding himself by secretly watching her play the piano, come rain or shine, whenever he was included in the top class invited at the Marquis Manor. During those 4 years, he believed that the sheltered, innocent girl would empathize and be angry on his behalf should she become aware of his existence and the darkness of the training camp. He put her in a pedestal, considered her a noble and sacred being capable of sympathizing with the unfortunate. This is what he believed meeting her would turn out. And so, his 4 years of enduring the harsh training camp came to fruition. He became a member of the special task forces who served directly under the Marquis. But that alone wasn't enough. Forgetting the kind physician's warning entirely, he aimed for a higher dream. Seeing the new assignment as a means to be promoted in the regular army, he aimed to get closer to her. On that day, before he went on his mission, he bought an elaborate bouquet of blue hydrangeas. In the language of flowers, it symbolizes a desire for greater understanding of each other, abundance and wealth. Watching her from afar, on the exact same spot for 4 years, he dared to utter her name. Hearing her name on his lips evoked a plethora of emotions he dared not put a name. Overwhelmed with embarrassment, he left the bouquet on the windowsill and left. He took mission after mission while keeping tabs on her through newspapers. The blonde lady he cherishes won competitions one after the other. He worked harder than a horse, as if keeping up with her achievements. 5 years later, in the summer of 712. Returning to the Marquis' mansion, he discovered that the practice room was transferred to the inner part. He will not be able to see her anymore unless luck permits it. He started having insecure thoughts. A man, such as himself, blood-stained from head to toe, can't be a match to the most beautiful and noble lady of their land. Was his struggle even meaningful? Treading the mansion's halls, he looked down at the rose garden and saw her by chance. His comrade in arms teased him about how smitten he is with her, but he brushed him aside by saying that a man of low birth, like him, will never be even considered. Rumors has it that the blonde lady was not up for ranks alone. She's been seeing various kinds of people. Even her father, the Marquis, can't interfere with her love life. Still, he debunked his comrade's teasing. Even if she's dating outside of her rank, it has to be someone of the highest middle class or above. An official enlistment would immediately raise one's social rank, according to his friend. People from the training camp should keep their background if they so wish to apply. But the raven-haired man wasn't paying attention to his comrade's yapper. He was busy thinking about the blonde lady's relationship. Who were the guys she met? Whose hand did she hold? To whom did she smile at? He chided himself for the outrageous things he's been thinking. He abhors the way he felt jealous about her interactions with others. Autumn of that same year, outside the borders of their land. Their special operations unit went out on another mission. The wind was cold and the terrain was unforgiving. Exchange of friendly banter occur among their members. In spite of romance being an inconvenience to spies such as themselves, a casual inquiry about love transpired. The mood became awkward as the raven-haired man shared his opinion. He is neither the possessive kind nor the type of lover who cherishes the woman he adores. To do so is pointless. What's precious to him is also precious to others, she'll likely to be taken away eventually. Rather than allowing others to take her, it'll be better to destroy her. If she can't be entirely his, better off she won't be any good to anyone at all. Wallowing, he thought of her. But the more he thinks of her, the more miserable he felt. He must be really broken, even more than anyone in their troop can be. How he wished they met. A wish that became even more distant. Their mission failed. There was a traitor among them. Members of the special operations were captured save for one. A man with red hair. He's a capable operative. He'll definitely bring reinforcements, but before they can reach them, they have to hold out as much as they can. Easier said than done. Every day is agony. The torture was relentless. Extreme beating precedes interrogation. It's a daily routine dealing with physical pain and mental anguish. Days of torture and attempt at mental manipulation failed to make him spill anything. Their captors changed their approach. They let the raven-haired man meet with one of his comrades, a copper-haired guy. He urged him to agree to the interrogators and spill it all. They won't set them free anyway, better die quickly after spilling it all. The raven-haired guy stood his ground and refused. The copper-haired guy told him that the red-headed guy who escaped was the traitor. The thought already crossed his mind, but loyalty to his comrades brushed that possibility aside. Now that it's out in the open, they're nothing much to mope about. They just have to think of a way of holding their ground and die or die trying to escape the goddamned place. But it wasn't the case. His comrades fell one by one, unable to withstand the torture. The copper-haired guy being the first. He was killed right in front of his eyes. The torture they inflicted on him became worse as days went by, still he stonewalled. Not wanting to give in, hoping to go home, back to the blonde lady he so admires. Amidst the torture that left him scarred, he found solace with thoughts of the blonde lady. Even when they burned his chest and wound him writing the words that meant he is a young male prostitute of their kingdom, he kept his mouth shut. He believes that a day will come when he will come home to her, that she'll accept the scarred man that he is. He put his faith in her, the blonde lady, that her demeanor is as noble as her music, that in the moment he tells her his story, she'll be angry for him, she'll console him. She'll be able to face the horror of his own reality. His endurance came to fruition, when at last their kingdom declared an all-out war against the kingdom of their captors. Soldiers attacked the prison and captives were freed except for their fellow spies who were on the verge of dying. They were killed, as per their orders, because they'll only become a liability. The raven-haired man and a fellow spy, a mustard-haired woman, were fit enough to escape. However, the raven-haired man killed her because she was among the spies that relented and gave away state secrets. All traitors must die, as per their training. And so, on the spring of year 714, the raven-haired man was proclaimed a hero and was promoted to the rank of lieutenant. An elaborate and luxurious party was held in his honor at the Marquis Palace. Not just did he manage to survive without spilling state secrets, he also brought secrets he gathered from the enemy. His achievement gave the Marquis immeasurable power and secured his position among the royals. However, the raven-haired man also discovered that the Marquis, the head of operations during the war, declined any talks of prisoner exchange. To him, doing so meant wasting precious resources. They were nothing but dispensable resources in the Marquis' eyes. That night, after the party, he was given a room to spend the night in the Marquis Palace, as part of his reward. Thoughts of his fallen comrades and the torture he endured haunted him in the quiet of the night. Still, to be able to return to his homeland is a blessing in itself. But, is it really worth it? After the war, what was he doing with his life? Morning came and the heaviness he is feeling haven't abated. Wandering aimlessly in the rose garden, he found himself looking inside the now empty practice room, through its closed windows. It did nothing to lift his mood. Feeling down, he questioned his intentions. Why did he ever come back? Did he intend to present the scarred and broken him to the blonde lady? His despair was too much to bear, he decided to go back to his room. But, as chance would play people in its hands, there she is. Lo and behold, his reason for his existence was there, in all her glory, as he turned around. Exchanging pleasantries, he felt he was in cloud nine. But that won't last long. As soon as he started to confess his feelings, her father came and all of her attention turned to the Marquis. No, she was never paying attention to what he was saying from the very start. Her words were part of her routine, something that she says to anyone without really listening to what was being said. Reaching them, her father properly introduced them to each other. The blonde lady showed interest when her father mentioned that he was the remarkable Special Operations Unit member who solely returned with valuable merits. When the raven-haired man started to mention his comrades, she interceded as if absolutely sure of what she's saying, that they sacrificed their lives for the country, that she mourns them deeply. As if it was some trivial topic the aristocrats talk about during a charity event. His control was truly noteworthy as he remained composed while the father and daughter tandem continued their useless chatter in front of him. She mourns them? But it never reached her eyes. Her expression remained as flawless as a smiling doll. Grief was nowhere to be found. Disillusionment replaced the years of admiration he has for her. When they finally bid him goodbye, he allowed himself to dive in full anger and despair. A saintess? It was all his delusion. Reality hit him and he vomited. She was no different from her father, the Marquis. He thought she was someone who could empathize with pain, lament over losses, and be angry with injustice. But, no. She is the Marquis' beloved only daughter, enjoying her position as if it's the most natural thing for her. Admiration turned to hatred. Loyalty turned to treachery. When escaping the enemy territories, the raven-haired man secured several confidential documents. These include reports of revolutionary groups forming within their kingdom and the formation of an army by the same group. If it were the past him, he could have immediately submitted it to the Marquis, but he opted to burn it. The raven-haired man started to harbor a desire to overthrow the Marquis. Anonymously, he sent the internal military formation of their own kingdom's army, and confidential matters related to the Marquis to the revolutionary forces. Hoping that the Marquis despair as much as he did. To lose as much as he lost. And just as he was present in his moments of misfortune, he longs to be present in his. To his long sought-after blonde lady, he wished her a life as dark as has been for so long. He wanted her to be accountable, one way or another, since it is her fault that he became the way he is. The day of his inauguration as a lieutenant came, he was appointed as a trusted aide of the Marquis. A promising young officer, and yet he still felt as insignificant as the orphan boy he once was. Planning all his interaction with the blonde lady, he carefully studied her and timed their coincidental meetings. At a party he made certain that he'll have her interest, not a fleeting one but something that'll leave a lasting impression. She showed not a fleeting interest but something akin to genuine attraction, when finally they met once again. He attended the piano recital of a known genius pianist which he knew the blonde lady idolizes. He studied her hobbies and tastes, read the books she fancies, followed the artists she admires. It come to fruition for she finds it truly fascinating that he's a soldier and yet he loves literature. While her father and soldiers she met interpreted literature as something that makes people see the world pessimistically, the raven-haired man believes that it is the writer's job to reveal the light and dark sides of society. He catered his looks and demeanor to her preferences, and soon enough they became steady and had regular dates. On a day he failed to have a decent night's sleep, his character slipped and evoked unusual worry from her. Not wanting to thwart his plans, he assured her that he is okay. Still, she showed a bothered expression. Wondering if his cover was blown, what transpired next is nothing he anticipated. She confessed and openly admitted she's smitten with him. This paved the way to their marriage. His plan worked, the most sought-after lady in their kingdom is now his. Wishing she would break and lose her worth. He wished for her to mean nothing to him. For him to finally lose the love he feels for her. These are all the events that transpired prior and during the union of the raven-haired man and the blonde lady. Fast forward to current time. It's the usual hustle and bustle of the market. A guy with mocha-colored hair is trying to make a move on a lovely blonde woman as they discuss the prices of goods. The owner of said store came, the brown-haired woman, shooed him away and said that his persistence is making the blonde woman uncomfortable. Said blonde woman is none other than the ex-wife of the raven-haired man.